Hi there. A lot of people ask me, what is Embrilliance? And Embrilliance is a suite of products, but most people are familiar with Embrilliance Essentials. Essentials is an editing software. It's very basic in terms of its ease of use. It's fairly inexpensive. It runs on a Mac and a PC, but what can you do with it? In this video, I'm going to show you 10 of the most common tasks that you might want to do in Embrilliance Essentials. So, let's go. One of the most common things that you would do with Embrilliance Essentials is to create letter-based designs. It's really easy to do that. All you have to do is click on this little letter icon right there, and then you are brought to your lettering palette over here. By default, it puts in A, B, C as the letters. That's not typically what I want to type out. So let me change this to my name, and then I can select what font that I want it in. And I've got a whole bunch of fonts because I make fonts myself, but also I've downloaded some other people's fonts and even gotten some free fonts. These are BX fonts which load right into Embrilliance. So I can select a font, and there I go, I have it. The great thing about these fonts in Embrilliance is that I can scale them up or down, and to a certain degree. It's kind of dependent on how the digitizer set it up, but once I have decided on my size, all I do is I save it as a file that my machine would read. So if it was PES or HUS or whatever, I just save it in the file format that I need for my machine, and I stitch it out. So that is one of the most useful features in Embrilliance Essentials. Creating names, letters, and monograms out of BX fonts that you load into Embrilliance Essentials. The next most useful thing, I think, is to be able to combine lettering with a design. So I can load in a design that I have on my computer here. So I'm going to merge in one of my designs. I'm navigating to the design. I figure out which size I want, probably something not too large. So I'm going to merge that in, and there we go. As you can see over here, I have the sailboat design and the letters. Obviously my letters are quite large. They're overpowering the sailboats at this moment, so let's make that much smaller. I might even want to go to a smaller font. This is a pretty big and bold font, and my sailboats are kind of delicate. I do not know why this is spinning right now. It's just taking a little while to think, but here I go. So let's say we like that look, which actually I don't. Let's do something that might be a little bit wider by nature, and I think I have something in mind. My sporty summer serif. That seems to look a little bit better. I might do it uppercase and lowercase and not all uppercase. And now I can save the combined design out. I can make sure that I like the relationship of the text to the image, and I can save that combined design out just like I did before and stitch it out on my embroidery machine. This is where Embrilliance Essentials offers more features than Express. In Express, the free version of Embrilliance, I can lay out names and monograms using BX fonts. However, I can't combine other embroidery designs with my lettering. So combining lettering and designs is the second most useful thing you can do in Embrilliance Essentials. Okay, the third most useful thing in Embrilliance Essentials, I think, is being able to change colors of certain elements in the design. Now, in this example here, my name is a coral color. I probably would want to use one of the colors in my embroidery design for my name, just to make it more cohesive. So let's take a look right here, and if I select this orange-red color, I like that color. Maybe I want to make my name that color too. So let's go back, select the name, and then I can click on the color swatch over here. And instead of going through all of my different colors available to me, I could click on palettes to see the colors that are already within my working area right now. And here I have that orange red. Okay, so now I know that this is going to match the orange red in my design. Now to make things more interesting, I would probably want to stitch out the orange red of the name at the same time I'm doing the orange red of the design. So I can drag and drop my lettering in here right after the orange red. Now it looks a little funny here, but we can see that the order in which this stitches out, navy, orange, red, then the letters I know are orange, red, and then red. So it's going to be a lot more efficient to stitch out. This brings me to my fourth most useful thing you can do in Embrilliance Essentials, and that is to preview the stitch out of the design. In this case, we can see that my design is going to be stitching the navy, then this coral color, then the orange red, then the green, then the blue. Now that doesn't look all that remarkable. However, if we were to preview the old way my design was stitched out, so I'm going to say Command Z to undo. Right before I moved my letter colors, they are still orange red, I think, yes. However, I haven't changed the stitch order. Now if we click on the little needle here to preview, we see we have the coral, oh no, the orange red, and then we're jumping to the navy, then the coral, then the orange red again, then the green, then the blue. Again, by changing that color order, my design stitch out is going to be much more efficient. And if I'm on a single needle machine, I won't have to change thread colors again. The next most useful thing, I think, in Embrilliance Essentials is color sorting. And let me give you an example. Let's say you want to use one of these really fun fonts that have multiple colors within them. I have one here, and it is called Double the Fun Font. Okay. Let me put a name in here. I'll put my daughter's name since it's kind of long. Adelaide. All right. Now, if I do a stitch preview for this, which I've already shown you, look at that. It is like orange, pink, green, orange, green, pink, yellow, orange, lots of color changes. Now, how do I color sort this? Well, all I have to do is I go to Utility and then Color Sort. And I like to put it in a new view. And in this new view, you can see that it is much more efficient. Let's look at the stitch preview now. Orange, pink, green. Now it's going to go back to orange. And the reason why this is not perfect in terms of doing all of the orange at the same time is that the computer detected that some of the oranges needed to be in front of the other colors. Now, if I don't care and I would have to look at it more closely, I could say, for example, this A, which is yellow, and this A and L down here, also yellow. I could do this at the same time, but then it's going to be behind the hot pink. And if that's acceptable to me, then I can just go with it. And I can move all of the hot pink together. And again, now as I'm making these changes, you can see that the stitch preview is getting to be more efficient. The question is the aesthetic correct? And in this case, it looks fine to me. However, you may want to test stitch this. When you color sort some designs, Embrilliance will say, well, the digitizer really wanted that to be behind that, so we can't, maybe we don't want to color sort that. But of course, you can do some manual adjustments just as I'm showing you right here. So color sorting is super useful and one of my favorite features of Embrilliance Essentials. The sixth most useful thing I think you can do in Embrilliance Essentials is simply changing the file format of a design. I have opened this PES design. So this is designed to be stitched out on a Brother or Baby Lock machine that reads PES files. But let's say I have another embroidery machine and I need to convert it to a different file format. It's really easy if you have Embrilliance Essentials. All I have to do is I do File, Save Stitch File As, and once I do that, I have access to a whole bunch of different other file formats. So if I needed an HUS file, for example, I could simply save it out in that file format. So essentially what you're doing is you're converting embroidery design file formats. Super useful. All right, moving on. One other little trick that you can do in Embrilliance Essential that I think is really useful is being able to extract elements out of a design. Now in this case, this yellow star is going to be very easy to extract because it's the only element that is its color. So if I just expand the design, I can see here that the yellow element is isolated by itself. So I can copy it and I can create a new document. So I did Command C to copy, Command N to create a new project here, and then I'm going to do Command V to paste it, and now I have that star by itself. And I can do a lot of different things with that star. I can start using it as the basis for another design. But getting back to the golf club, the crossed clubs with the golf club and T, I can get the T and the golf club as well because they are separate elements, so it's actually easier than I thought. Now it gets a little bit trickier, so just for demonstration purposes, I will copy these two elements, create a new project here, and paste, and now I have my golf club and T by itself, and I can do whatever I want with that. Now, if you have an element that is kind of connected to another element, or maybe you have multiple elements that are the same color and you're just trying to extract one of them, you can sometimes do that in Embrilliance Essentials if you can get to the point where the machine is moving from one object to the next. As it's starting to stitch one, it's done stitching that one, then it goes to the next one. You can create a break which will allow you to extract that element out of the design. But if the item is its own color, as you've seen here, it's very easy to extract one element from a design. And that is my number 7. Okay, we're up to number 8, and this is a good one. One of the most useful things I think you can do in Embrilliance Essentials is to be able to flip a design. So check this out. Here I have my little poodle with the ball embroidery design. I'm going to select it over here, and I'm going to say Command C to copy it, Command V to paste it. Now, it doesn't look too different on the screen right here, but now you can see I have 2 instances of this design. I'm going to select the second one, and I'm going to click this little button right here, which is flip. All right, and now I'm going to grab it and move it over. And now I have 2 little versions of my poodle. And you know what would be really, really cute is if I put an initial between them. Let's grab my lettering tool and I will create the letter A just for the heck of it, and let's get a nice font. I have one in mind here that I think would look really cute, which is the Longboat Key monogram, and I'm going to make it bigger. Why don't I just type in a larger dimension? We'll say make this 4 inches, and boom, move it into place. Now how stinking cute is that? And if you've been paying attention to this video, you'll know that we can color sort this design and we can change this letter A to a color that matches my design. How do you like that? Beautiful. All right, so you may recall from a few minutes ago, we extracted this little star design from a larger design. Let's do something fun with it and show you the 9th most useful thing in Embrilliance Essentials. All right, so I'm going to take my little star here and I am going to copy and paste it. So Command C, Command V, it is right there. That's one of my stars. I have it selected, Command C, Command V. Now I have a 3rd star, and let's copy that and paste it, Command V. All right, cool. Now I have 4 stars, but they're all out of line. What if I want a nice little solid line of stars? Well, you can do that. by selecting all of them. So I'm going to shift select to get all of them. Then I'm going to go to utility and I'm going to go to align and distribute. Align's pretty easy to understand. We want to align them all vertically, and I can choose the center, top, or bottom. It doesn't really matter because they're all the same shape. So we'll align them vertically, but now the spacing is a little bit wonky between all of them. If I pick distribute and then spacing, and I have the extent of the selection, meaning that it's going to make them equally spaced within this selection, and I say apply, now they're evenly spaced. Beautiful. Now, what would I do with these stars? I don't know. Maybe you want to add a name. So let's just say Thomas. And then I can put this name in between two rows of stars or something like that. And again, maybe my stars are too far apart. Again, I could go back and align and distribute them to make them an appropriate size. Okay, so that's what I might want to do with something like that. In Enthusiast, you can also make wreaths and different new shapes, more interesting shapes with these individual embroidery designs. But this is about essentials. So let's move on to our last, most useful thing you can do with Embrilliance Essentials. So the last most useful thing that I'm going to go with is resizing a design. You may have heard that it's not a good idea to resize designs that you purchase online, and that's why digitizers release several different sizes of a design typically when they sell a design. In this case, let's just say that you want it maybe 10% smaller of this actual design, and 10% is kind of like about the amount that you would ever want to resize something without being really concerned that it's going to mess things up. If I look at the design right now, you can see it's 4 3/4 inches by 4 7/8 inches. If I select all, Command A, and I say, you know what, I want this to be 90% vertically and horizontally, 90% of its original size, I can see that I've made it physically smaller, but also notice that the stitch count has gone down. It's down to 6,442 stitches, whereas before, I'm going to say Command Z to undo, it was 6979. So what Embrilliance can do is it actually removes the excess stitches, so you don't end up with this super dense design where it's like trying to fit the same number of stitches into a smaller area. Now again, anytime you're asking the computer or the software to make a decision like which stitches to remove, which stitches to keep, it may not be the best decision in the whole world. So if you're going to resize a design, it's always a good idea to test stitch it before you put it on your finished product. So I hope you found the video to be useful and you have a much better idea of what you can do with Embrilliance Essentials. Thanks so much. Good luck, everyone.